Afternoon and happy Thursday, everyone. My name is Wesley Alexander. I'm the CEO of Covis Richmond, and we are here for another great session for the Great Diversity Series, where we talk to movers and shakers who are doing phenomenal things in the arenas where they play. And they're here to share their mindset, their lessons learned, the perspective that they had to tap into in order for them to become what they are now. Today, we're joined by a phenomenal person. And I'm going to just say it because she has a purpose. She is a social entrepreneur. She is an intellectual property attorney. She also is the founding partner of Frim for the Culture. And she also doing something really, really wonderful to help those who are first generational professionals or creators. And she'll speak a little bit more to that later. But her name is Ruky, and I'm just grateful to have you here today. So welcome, Ruky. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Wesley. How are you doing? I'm super excited to be here today.
I'm doing good. It's awesome to be able to have the opportunity for you to share your story. So thank you very much for seeing the value in this.
Absolutely.
So before we get into all the nuances of the legal world and your journey into entrepreneurship and big law and things of that nature, would you mind telling us a little bit of for you? What is your motivation as a person in terms of walking this planet?
Oh, wow. That is such a big, we just starting right out the gate. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I just want to start off by putting my motivation into the proper context by kind of talking about who I am. So I'm a proud first generation college grad, proud first generation law school graduate proudly from the projects of Ruky, New York. And I'm a graduate of UC Berkeley School of Law. And after a couple of years of wanting to be an attorney, I really just wanted to quit the law entirely because I was the first in my family to graduate from law school. I just didn't know what I didn't know about navigating this space effectively. And that, frankly, along with the lack of diversity, not having, lawyers who look like Wes, not having lawyers who look like me in these spaces, really made me want to quit. But mentors and friends, and frankly, some divine intervention convinced me that this was my purpose. So I decided to stay, and I ended up joining the #1 litigation firm in the country, and was highly successful as an intellectual property attorney in the Silicon Valley of this law firm. But I saw that the things that people around me saw as important forms of intellectual property were not necessarily taken into consideration diverse forms of intellectual property. So you would have names like Cardi B, which was a phenomenon, and Black Lives Matter, and even Hot Girl Summer kind of being dismissed in favor of the other tech brands like Spotify or Google or Facebook. And as a result, a lot of these brands just went to the whims of the market, later on to be either denied trademark protection and by extension trademark ownership. So seeing that as a problem, I decided to leave and start Frim for the Culture, which really brings together my creativity, our culture, and our love for the case law. And it's specifically designed for the social impact founder and diverse entrepreneur today, to protect their creativity as they make their mark in the world. And I say that all to say that a lot of that seemingly meandering journey is really guided by my purpose, my sense of motivation as to why I navigate the world I do, the world the way that I do. And my purpose or motivation is really to change and transform a diverse array of lives through my calling as an attorney. So I wanted to be an attorney since I was 5 years old. Ever since I heard the kindergarten version of Brown versus Board of Education and learned about Charles Hamilton Houston and Thurgood Marshall and the Legal Defense Fund and all the cases that led up to the ultimate Brown versus Board of Education that we all know today, and really seeing law as a catalyst for huge social and societal change, and really becoming kind of enamored with this idea that I too, as a Black person, could readily utilize the tenets and the tools of the legal field to create world change and to create social impact. So when I didn't see myself doing that in a way that was really meaningful, even when I was in this very, very high power, literally the #1 litigation firm in the country, my motivation and by extension, my purpose really motivated me to pivot into something that was really unapologetically for the culture. So welcome to Firm for the Culture.
All right, now I love it. Answered so many questions with that one answer. Thank you. So you mentioned law as a catalyst for change, and you being able to be a contributor to that change. Mm-hmm. Do you think if you didn't go to is this something you could have done immediately out of law school, or did you need to quote unquote put yourself in the best space to learn the tools, the nuances that you can then effectively proceed with your own enterprise?
Yeah, as a person who didn't do this immediately out of law school, I can't specifically answer that question other than to say I do have very, very dear friends who are highly successful who have done this immediately out of law school, have done this maybe 1 or 2 years, away from their law school graduation. So it is possible, but I will say that we at Firm for the Culture, we have accelerated our growth significantly and scaled our impact monumentally because of the very, very strong foundation and jumping off point that we had when we started Firm for the Culture. So, I'm barred in 2 of the hardest states in the country. I went to top law school. I worked at top law firms. So there's a huge and extensive network that I have access to as a result of engaging all of these, for lack of a better term, very elite spaces, right? And one of the things I've just become more unapologetic about is the privilege that I have as a result of being in these spaces, but also the responsibility and the beautiful things that I can conjure up because I have been and still continue to navigate these spaces. I have mentors who have literally clerked for Supreme Court justices. I'm 1 degree away, from amazing, huge people in the country and the world. So all of that, was really kind of utilized in a way that allowed Firm for the Culture to be a really, really well-known and quickly accepted, I guess, law firm in the way that it is today. And then also my experience as an intellectual property litigation attorney really informs the way I engage what's called the prosecution of intellectual property, which is the actual application process before the United States Patent and Trademark Office. So when we engage your application, we're not just engaging your application simply to get you registered, we're engaging it with an eye towards possible litigation. We're also engaging it with an eye towards monetizing your intellectual property in the long run. So that means assigning out your intellectual property to others for profit, or licensing out your intellectual property, because these are conversations and circumstances that I found myself in as an attorney. And I've seen a lot of the pitfalls that befall a lot of small business owners as a result of not taking the right steps in the beginning. So what I will say is, and I know this is long-winded, but what I will say is my experience and my journey up until this point have really informed the way I do law now, and I think it also gives me a lot of credibility in the way we administer our services at Firm for the Culture.
Oh man, thank you. I got so much to piggyback from that, but I'm gonna actually go back a little bit. You mentioned privilege and responsibility, but there was quite a bit of sacrifice and hard work that went in for you to get access to that privilege and responsibility. Can you speak to your journey? You mentioned that you're a first generation Nigerian American, is that correct?
I am, yeah. So my parents are They're Nigerian all day, every day. So, the stereotypical saying with Nigerian parents is you have 4 choices. You can either be a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, or an embarrassment. So, on one hand, I was definitely encouraged to be a lawyer, but on the other hand, I really do love this, and I genuinely wanted to be a lawyer since I was 5. So I think that kind of made my parents happy because they didn't have to fight me on that. But with that said, I did, we did struggle. There were so many times. I grew up in the projects of Brooklyn, New York, so there were so many times where we had more month than money, where there was needles in the staircase and urine in the elevators. We found where we learned to walk on the right side of the street because the Bloods are on the left side, and if we weren't wearing the right colors, that could really be fatal for some of us, and in fact was fatal for some of us. One of my best friends lost his life to gang violence. And I found out about that. And that happened when I was a first year at Berkeley. So it was definitely like, it feels like you're constantly oscillating or vacillating between these very different worlds. It was hard, and sometimes it continues to be hard. A lot of my family members are still on food stamps. So this idea of homeless to Harvard is a little bit more complex than what initially meets the eye. But in terms of my specific journey, leading up until this point, so went to University of Albany, graduated valedictorian, was an Africana Studies and Political Science major, studied for a semester at the University of Ghana in Legon, so really came into my culture and really came into my understanding of myself as a Black woman from my major and also from my study at Ghana, like literally visiting slave castles and literally visiting the kind of the genesis of sorts of our people who later on went out into the African diaspora. And then after graduating from college, went to Berkeley, and then after that worked at a top 20 law firm in New York City, studying securities and government enforcement for a year. And then after that went to, did a clerkship for a federal judge, an Obama appointed federal judge in the Eastern District of California in Sacramento. And as I tell my cousins back in Brooklyn, they're like, what's a clerk? What is that? And I'm like, a clerk is a fancy word for a ghostwriter for a judge. So it's a ghostwriter for a judge. The cases come before our court and we analyze them as clerks. We propose an opinion and we go back and forth, and the judge ultimately agrees with our opinion. It becomes law. So very big and amazing responsibility. So I did that for a couple of years and then joined my law firm that was the litigation firm in Silicon Valley, and worked there as an intellectual property attorney. And then after that, that's when I started Firm for the Culture. But yeah, no, the journey was meandering. The journey, like there's nothing in me that would have imagined that this would be my story.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
I mean, just frankly, I didn't see people who looked like me. I remember I was actually talking, one of the things I try to do, I don't always have time to do it, but if somebody hits me up on LinkedIn and is like, hey, I want to have a chat, and I just kind of want to like talk to you and ask you a couple of questions about this part of your journey, I'll just say, sure, let's hop on a call. So I was talking to one of those people that reached out to me just randomly on LinkedIn yesterday. And he was, I'm not too sure if he's first generation, but he's Black. He's in the Atlanta, and he's clerking for a federal judge. And I just had to kind of sit back for a minute and just like honor the fact that a former clerk was speaking to a future clerk, and we were both Black, because statistically speaking, less than 2% of clerks are Black. So, and I remember, and just to kind of bring that home, when I was a law clerk, I remember just scouring the internet for Black law clerks and not finding any, and just like, and being the only Black clerk in the courthouse, constantly being the only Black person in the courtroom. It was just like not an easy experience. I was so mired in the day to day that I didn't even think past the next day or the next week. So I couldn't see far enough to say, oh, this was going to be my journey. And then when you enter a space like big law, you definitely don't see it. You definitely don't see it. Like, I was the only Black person in Northern California for my law firm, and we were a firm of over 700 people all across the world. So it,
you said the only, you said?
The only person.
Out of 700.
Well, in Northern California. So there were about 6 total of us, and knowing me, I reached out to all of them and I was like, we gotta talk. If they were cool, because frankly, not all your skin folk is your kin folk, but that's besides the point, that's another conversation. But all I'm saying is when they reached back out to me, I was like, child, what is this? What is this? How do I, and I did form a really, really good community at my firm. of Black folks, including my mentor, Crystal Nix Hines, who is so freaking amazing and is like a prior clerk for Justice Thurgood Marshall. So she's like, she definitely was a huge and continues to be a huge inspiration to me. But again, just until I saw her, until I saw all of these things, I just couldn't imagine it for myself. Like it takes, it's really, in my experience, it was really just hard to see things, to imagine things that I couldn't see. Like, so I was just, but at the same time, and I definitely count myself blessed for this, I was constantly encouraged to dream bigger. So it really forced me to read more, look at more articles, look at videos, just look at all these things, including from things from people who didn't look like me. Like if I saw a white man doing it, I was like, I can do it. Okay, whatever. And I would do it. And, we would be successful at it. And so hopefully like a lot of people are seeing me as the person that is doing it so they can do it as well.
Oh man. Woo, just giving me ammunition. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So before I deep into the lack of diversity and what you mentioned something, things that you didn't see, things you didn't know. There's so much to explore there. But I wanted to ask this one particular question first. Many people in our business incubator or folks that I interact with, they use the word hard. And sometimes I tell them, I don't believe in that word. It's real, the journey is challenging, but hard always seems to be a place where they stop. Can you speak to, you said the journey was meandering. Can you speak to how you persevered as a young person, elementary school, high school, college, limited resources? How did you persevere?
Yeah, and it's actually interesting. And I think I'll just reshare it on my social media because I talked about kind of falling in love with the word hard and kind of sitting with it, having coffee with it, and just simply embracing it. Hard is not indicative of your competency. Hard is not indicative of your qualifications. It's just hard. Like, it's hard and it's totally fine. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't overcome it. So that's definitely something that I'm even just learning to embrace, like do hard stuff, have hard conversations. Don't be hardened, but have these hard conversations. But in terms of how I persevered, I wouldn't be the person that I am today if I didn't mention God. I am a God girl. I'm like a Christian for real. Like I'm not out here wearing long skirts all the time. And your girl sometimes curses like a sailor, but I'm a Christian for real. So like, I attribute like it all to Christ. I attribute it all to God, but also in the manifestation of the mentors and sponsors and tutors. Like I tell friends sometimes, because again, like I grew up in the hood. Like this wasn't like hood adjacent, like in the hood, like in corner stores, bodegas, like in the hood. So I tell friends, and I honestly think this is divine. Like I tell friends, I feel like one of those, if you ever go to the arcade and you see, I don't even know what that game is, but you see like the little silver ball just going through the game and it's being knocked. And it's just kind of being knocked side to side, just knocked. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I think it's a ping ball or a pinball machine. Yeah, so I feel like my life is kind of like a pinball or pinball machine in the sense that I might have gone through this way and God just sent somebody to say, nope, go this way. Nope, go this way. Nope, this way. This way. So, and I mean that by saying like, there were times where, my life has literally been saved because I happened to stay at an after school program, right? After school. There were times where I've avoided huge calamities because I was just at the right place at the right time, or not at the wrong place at the wrong time. Mm-hmm. So like, honestly, a lot of this is really just divine intervention. But aside from that, or in addition to that, what keeps me motivated? I don't know, like my sense of purpose and also, if I'm being honest, like I was not motivated all my life. So like, thank
you. We want the honesty.
Like I wasn't. I remember third grade, and I think this might be my first time admitting it. I was bad. Like, I was a bad child. Like, your girl was out here trying to be with Quay Quay and in the streets at 9 years old in Brooklyn. Because again, like, you're part of this space. So it's not like I just was like this good girl, just like carrying my books close to me, like avoiding everything. Your girl was out here about to be for the streets if it wasn't God. So with that, but at the same time, I just, again, like, my mom was a single mom, and I grew up as a middle child of two developmentally disabled brothers.
Wow.
So I'm the middle child, only girl. My older brother has Down syndrome. My younger brother has Down syndrome and autism. My older brother died when I was 15 suddenly. So it was just like, so I was just out here just like doing my own thing. But my mom, and I was actually speaking to somebody about this. My mom, while she didn't have the same education as me, there was just something, and I continue to thank her to this day, something about her just was determined not to be intimidated by like this young hood girl's brilliance. She was like, I'm not only not gonna be intimidated by it, I'm gonna nurture it. So like, she was the one that was constantly bringing me to all of these programs. She was like, oh, you need, and you're from Brooklyn West, so you know, like the LaGuardias and the Stuyvesants and all them. She was the one that was like, she didn't really know what she was doing all the time, but she figured it out. Like, and I got accepted, like I was part of magnet schools, like pretty much all my life. I was part of the gifted and talented programs pretty much all my life. But third grade, whoo child. All right, so I'm out here with Quay Quay and them and just trying to be cool. And my mom, like, is a whole Nigerian, let me be very clear. So we go to parent teachers night one day, and she gets the feedback from my teacher, and I'm sitting there, and my mom was cool as a cucumber. Oh, I still remember, it terrifies me how cool, how calm she was. Like, it was like serial killer calm. She was like, oh really, so Ruky's acting out of class. Talking over you. Huh. Okay. We go home, and by no means, let me just, before I start, warning, episodes of violence, okay? So just warning, she beat my behind. But anyways, so we're going home, and she's like, okay, Ruky, have dinner. So I'm eating dinner, and I'm just like, okay, cool, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, go take a shower. And I was like, all right, I'll take a shower. And she opens it. Mind you, she's not abusive. Don't get me wrong. She was like, she's a single mom. She's mad. But she opens it and starts hitting me, and she's like, you are gonna be better. Like, she was just, and this is like, and just going hard. And then, but listen, I was on the honor roll the next month, let me tell you that. So, all right, so definitely, again, like, while again, I don't condone violence, it was one of those, like, I was going a certain direction, and God was like, nope, no, you're not finna do that. So that was definitely, to me, divine. And then, you know, as an attorney, there was a time that I wanted to quit, and I definitely had a breakdown because my imposter syndrome just became so overwhelming that I was just like, I'm done. And I actually hustled my way into an interview with the top tech firm as a diversity and inclusion consultant. And just long story short, because I don't want to belabor the point, but this person ended up praying and preaching to me and praying with me about my purpose. It was like, no, you're not supposed to be this. You're supposed to be an attorney. And I was like, what? How are you telling me this? Like, I'm trying to get this job. And she prayed with me and just really spoke into my life. And it was it was less than a month after that I ended up at the #1 litigation firm in the country. So again, like, you know, I think one of the things that people tell us is like, you kind of always have to be on the right path. But I feel like grace is really real. Yes, grace is like a very, very real thing. And I've experienced it. I've personally experienced it in the sense that I've literally tried to leave. I've literally tried to leave. I've literally tried to pop off. I've literally thought I knew what I was doing. But if you are in tune with your purpose, if you are in tune with, in my case, the Holy Spirit, if you're in tune with mentors and sponsors and people who are really invested in your growth, you will find your way back. Like you really will find your way back. So again, long-winded answers, but here we are.
I really salute you for being honest. Success never happens really in a straight line. There is quite a bit of different people involved in the process that help you get to where you need to get to. And then also for those that are spiritual, there's also that big component that helps us get to where we need to be. So I really appreciate you telling that story, because people may see you now and not understand the journey, and they may just see, oh, was this easy for her? She has access. No, you went through your trials and tribulations, and you were also open to learning and being coached. And so we're happy that you're here.
Yeah. And I'll also say to that point, Wes, thank you for that. Don't be afraid to admit that you don't know what you don't know. Because after my time that I wanted to quit being a lawyer during my clerkship when I was the ghostwriter. During my clerkship, which
why exactly did you want to quit?
My imposter syndrome just got so overwhelming that I was like, I'm not suited for this. I don't belong in this. Because I did not see people who looked like me, so I was just like convinced that I just didn't belong there. And I made mistakes, and I instead of like just simply saying, okay, it was a mistake, you can go on, I literally thought of the mistake as like career ending. I was like, well, this just means I'm not competent. But after that breakdown, where there was just a lot of grace, like my judge spoke to me, my team spoke to me. They were like, Ruky, we didn't ask you to be on this team because of anything else other than the fact that you're brilliant. And I started to believe that. But in believing that, I also, became open to simply asking questions and just saying, I don't know what I don't know. One time that really comes to memory is when I was reaching out to my mentor at the time, who was also what's called a career clerk. So clerkships are typically 1 to 2 years long on average for young attorneys and graduate law students. But there are some people who decide to take on the journey as a career. So you'll have people who are literally clerks for judges for 15, 20, maybe 30 years. So this particular person that happened to be my mentor was a clerk for a judge for about 20, 25 years. So she kind of knew what she was doing. So I reached out to her, and I remember just saying to her, like, I don't even know what questions to ask you. Like, I don't even know what I don't know. And just starting there, and just simply starting there. And also, and I remember her telling me, well, what assignments do you have on your plate? Like, so she gave me, like, she put my very kind of ethereal, like, kind of like, I don't know anything, very like just very like intangible understanding of this big thing called the law. She put it into the proper context. She's like, okay, well, let's get pragmatic, let's get practical, and start off with the assignment that you have that the judge gave you that's due in 2 weeks. Let's start off with that. So we started off with that, and I was like, okay, well, I don't really know how to research this. And she like literally walked me through Westlaw and LexisNexis and all these search engines, and literally just retaught me. And I remember, oh my God, I'm about to cry. I remember like less than a week after she taught me that, I drafted my first real opinion. And I gave it to her, and I was like, hey, just look at this, just read it over when you can, get me back the answer. She comes into my office with the paper in her hand, and she's like, Ruky, this is amazing.
Yes, right.
And I don't know, like,
it made you see what's possible.
After I wanted to quit, right? So like, it definitely made me see what's possible, but it also gave me a lot of insight into what access looks like and what access means. It's not that it's not that you're not smart. It's not that you're not capable. It's that historically we have been denied the access to a lot of the things and the people and the places that really will allow us further understanding of the things that make us come alive.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, I always loved the law. I knew the law. The law was Thurgood Marshall and Charles Hamilton Houston, those were the reasons I came into the law. But when you are constantly told that you do not belong in this space, you start to believe it until somebody actually, and this was a white woman. So my mentor was a white woman, until this person actually invest in you. And she was like, kind of like my Coach Carter in essence. Like, she was just like, you got to keep on going. There were times where I didn't want to be there on a Saturday. She's like, what are you doing? You got to be there on a Saturday. So I definitely attribute a lot of my growth to her as well.
Wow. Okay. You know, few things. Many of us at times want to feel that we do know it, because if we acknowledge that we don't know something, it can be seen as a weakness, especially if you're in an environment where you're the only one. You mentioned asking questions, finding mentors, sponsors. Can you share with us, how did you discover the mentors? How did you reach out to them? How did you know which publications to read? This is a space and place that puts a lot of pressure on us when we are in environments where we are the only one. And if you can't ask questions, if you don't have people you trust, how do you navigate?
Yeah, and I think, yes, there is. And the first thing that comes to mind is just really understanding the difference between a mentor, a sponsor, and a therapist.
Thank you.
Because, okay, so mentors are, in my opinion, people that are typically there to show you the ropes. They don't have any, like, a lot of times they may not have any other intent or motivation for engaging you other than simply to help you and show you the ropes. On the other hand, a sponsor, and with a mentor, that's where you can show a lot of your weaknesses. You can ask a bunch of the questions. You can ask a bunch of the things that you may not know that you don't know. Because a mentor is really there to say, the purpose of the relationship is literally to help you unpack or reveal what you don't know. On the other hand, a sponsor is a person that should see you in your best light. So that's the person that you are going to, with all the A's on your report card, that you are going to, after, in my case, you win a big case or you get a big legal victory. That's the person that you are like constantly just showing yourself off, bragging. And the reason why is because a sponsor, oftentimes a very, very highly connected person, is in rooms that you may not actually have access to quite yet, but is speaking about you or has the ability to speak about you in these rooms that you don't have access to. So essentially, the way it works is you're literally feeding the sponsor information that they will then take into the rooms that you may not yet have access to and help you level up. So that's a sponsor. Yes. On the other hand, a therapist. A mentor is not a therapist. A mentor is not your homegirl in a lot of instances, unless you guys are like companion mentors with each other, and that's a whole nother situation. But mentors are not homegirls. Mentors are not homies. Like a mentor is not a person, at least in my experience. I can't talk to everyone else, but in my mentorship relationships, a mentor is really a person designed to pour into you, but there has to be some understanding of at least some type of reciprocity. So the reason I have very, very good mentor relationships, but the reason I have that is because I'm always intentional about figuring out a way that I can also pour into the other person. The fact of the matter is, like, these people know what they know. But even with my friends, or even with my mentor, who was the career clerk, I made food for her. Like, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It's just like showing them that you truly appreciate the wisdom and knowledge that they're sharing with you. But like, I wasn't calling her all the time, like, girl, let me tell you about my life. Like, it was very much, I understand that your time is valuable. I understand that your time is important. So I'm going to steward this relationship in such a way to make sure that every single time I come to you, I've come as best prepared as I know how. So it's very easy for you to simply pour into me and not feel absolutely depleted at the end of this.
Yes.
Right? So on the other hand, there's a therapist who's literally paid to like walk you through trauma and stuff. And I'm not saying that you can't admit trauma to your mentors and stuff, but there has to be some intentionality about the relationship. And speaking of relationship, mentorship is a relationship. Don't just hit me up. Don't just text a random person and be like, can you be my mentor? That's kind of like asking somebody, can you be my boyfriend? No, I can't. No, I can't be your girlfriend. Like, so it's something that you build upon. And then there's just like something, but how did these people become mentors? Because again, like many of the people who ultimately were my mentors, I never asked them explicitly, can you be my mentor? I just started off by asking them very, very simple questions that they could answer very quickly. The way I did it, especially with one of my mentors, who is the partner at Quinn, which is the firm that I used to work at. I just started off by asking her like, can you speak to this particular section of this statute or something like that? Like, I know that you've done a lot of work when you were like in the Obama administration or just something like that. It was like, just like a little thing to just open the door. Yes. And then after she answered my question, I would tell her, thank you so much. I will keep you updated on what happens. So that's like, so now you buy in their interest and like literally like saying, okay, keep me updated. And when you tell them that you're going to keep them updated, keep them updated. like email them, just like, or say, like if somebody talks to you about a possible job and you want them to be your mentor, literally just say, okay, thank you so much. You gave me such great and sound advice. The interviews next week, I'll be sure to keep you apprised or abreast of everything that's going on. And go back to them and say, thank you so much for your advice. Here's what happened. And then if you want, and now you have a person that's literally invested in you, like, and investing more and more interest in you. And now you can use that second jumping off point when you circle back with them to say, actually, this next level of the engagement that you gave me advice about, actually, it actually conjures up another question. This is this very, very small, less than 5-minute question. What do you think about this? And they'll be like, oh, I think X, Y, and Z. And it's like, oh, that's actually a really, really good point. I think I'm going to do that. Can I let you know what happens when I do the very thing that you advise me on? So that's kind of how it started to happen. And I did that with a myriad of like people at my firm. Like I did that with white men. I did that. Like I have like really bomb mentors and who still check in on me. Who still to this day will, like, I probably had like 4 calls just in the last 2 months with a bunch of like Quinn people. Just, hey, Ruky, just checking in. When you coming back? I'm like, I'm not the point. But I'm saying this to say, like, they were really interested. And then, maybe like if something spoke to the conversation that we had, whether it was an article or a book or something, I would either send it to them by email. Or if it was like this really nice book, like I remember one of my mentors, she worked in the Obama administration. So I assumed she loved Michelle Obama. So when Michelle Obama's Becoming came out, I bought her 2 copies, like 2 physical hard copies, because I was just like, well, thank you, mentor, and she loves it. She loves it. So, just kind of think about ways, because mentorship, at least, with the mentors I have and with the mentorship I do, we take it seriously. Like we really want you to win. We really want you to succeed. And we're pouring so much into you for no money most of the time, or no type of like reciprocity that would really be, frankly, meaningful to our career in essence. So be appreciative of that, whether it's like literally listening to us and buying us a book or buying us coffee, or just doing something to just say, I appreciate the wisdom that you're sharing with me, because you don't have to. So, yeah.
I really, really appreciate the fact that you mentioned the power of relationships. And for any of us that are trying to achieve any particular professional or entrepreneurial goals, really take Ruky's advice in terms of, you can start in junior high school, in high school, in college, in your first entry level job. Build relationships, identify people who can be mentors, understand the difference between a mentor and a sponsor and a therapist. And if you kind of cultivate those relationships and some of the best practices she shared, a lot of great things can happen. So thank you for really emphasizing that. So now we want to transition into your make a statement that intellectual property is a civil right. And convey to us, first of all, what is intellectual property, and why do you think it's something that the culture needs to really appreciate and understand?
Sure. So intellectual property at first glance can be very intimidating, and it can be very like this kind of like, again, cerebral, kind of ethereal thing. But at its core, intellectual property is literally just a physical or tangible manifestation of a thought put into tangible form. And there are 4 types of intellectual property. You have patents, which are like inventions or coding or, phones, like swipe, like, apps or something. And then there are trademarks, which is a name, a slogan, a color, a sound that is used to distinguish some goods and services from others by the name of the brands. And then there are copyrights, which are literary and artistic works put in a fixed, i.e. tangible medium for dissemination throughout society, right? And then there are trade secrets, which are not necessarily like the other forms of the intellectual property. Trade secrets can be any of these things, or even sometimes none of these: trademark, copyright, or patents. And trade secrets are valuable proprietary information that is kind of kept in-house in a way that brings value to the organization. So like KFC's chicken recipe, like that can be protected theoretically, especially, it could theoretically be protected if it's like very, very special, possibly by copyright, with some obvious exceptions, but it's a trade secret. It's a secret of their trade. Or Coca-Cola's recipe, right? Trade secret. So I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was the second part of it? Oh, intellectual property being a civil right. Why do I think it's a civil right? So many reasons. That's a whole nother webinar. But in short, we believe that it's a civil right because we feel like historically people of color and diverse entrepreneurs haven't had access to the resources to really protect their creative contributions to the culture. And this is going all the way back to slavery. When you talk about, like, even there's a famous whiskey by Jim Daniels. And, one of the things I learned as an intellectual property attorney is that Jim Daniels, who I believe is white, he got that recipe from his slave, right? So it's still lasting to this day. And it's still in the family that's not like connected to the slave is still benefiting from this thing that the slave made. And that you're talking about trade secrets, patents, trademark, like you're talking about it all. And the fact of the matter is we haven't been told about the value of our unique contributions to the culture, such that a lot of our intellectual property contributions are just subject to the whims of the market. And then by the time we get woke as to the value, it becomes too late. One famous example that's just been like really relevant as of late, particularly against the culture of COVID and Black lives and just like Black injustice, is the brand Black Lives Matter. So Black Lives Matter was formulated as a brand in 2014, shortly after the death of Trayvon Martin and the acquittal of George Zimmerman. And I don't know who was on their team, frankly, but like they didn't trademark their brand. Even after the 2016 election, which is pretty much this, but the first one, right? This election, but the first one, after they were on the national and international stage, questioning both presidential candidates at the time, Hillary and Trump, even after Sandra Bland, even after Michael Brown, even after, Eric Garner, like they still didn't trademark their brand, and they were becoming very, very quickly a household name until 2017. They finally applied to trademark their brand after 4 years of just doing so much work in the community and changing lives, literally. And they got rejected from the United States Patent and Trademark Office because essentially what the USPTO said is that their brand was too commonplace, which is a fancy way of saying because everybody uses your brand now, no one person can own the brand. And had they known about that, I'm sure they would have taken different steps. But fast forward, from 2017, after that rejection was administered, to 2020, we received news of the death of George Floyd. And there's kind of like this resurgence of sorts of Black Lives Matter. And so much so that you have a lot of people from huge organizations donating to a purported Black Lives Matter. The problem was that because Black Lives Matter Global Network did not trademark its brand, Black Lives Matter Foundation, which is actually another organization founded in Santa Clarita, California, who happened to put up a GoFundMe page around the same time, got over $4.2 million in contributions donated to the wrong Black Lives Matter.
Yep.
Right? But we weren't told about the value. We weren't told about the necessity of protecting our brand, because by virtue of protecting our brand, we can protect the business narrative.
Right.
We can protect who uses it. We can license it out to people who want to use it. We can sue people for 3 times the amount of damages if they use it without our permission. So that is problematic to me. And that's what we talk about a lot at Firm for the Culture. But another reason why we wanted to kind of add intellectual property to the scope of civil rights is because I've done civil rights. Like I've done, and civil rights attorneys will know, like Section 1983 cases, which essentially allow you to bring constitutional claims against a state officer for violation of their constitutional rights under color of law. And that's really cool and jargony, and I actually love that stuff. But
Me too.
And death penalty, I've done the death penalty cases. I've literally gone to Alabama and Mississippi to talk to my clients on death row. So I've done that work. But what happens when you are not being shot by the police officers? What happens when you are not necessarily being racially discriminated in a way that makes you a hashtag on Twitter? You still have generational wealth to build. You still have a family legacy to protect. And what it looked like, at least for attorneys, particularly attorneys of colors, it felt like there was kind of like this false dichotomy that was built for us. It was like, you're either going to lose your authenticity or lose your sense of self, or make a lot of money in this very high-powered big law firm. Or if you want to get woke, stay woke, be woke, and not make any money, you join like nonprofit, which is not a bad thing. Neither of these options are bad, but it's like, what about the person that wants neither of these options?
Right.
And that was what Firm for the Culture became. Firm for the Culture became the law firm, and we've been very, very successful. That talks about Cardi B and trademarks. That talks about the problems with brands that don't take time to invest in themselves before they get really, really big. And really just brings a cultural perspective to the value of our unique contributions to society. So that's what we mean by intellectual property as a civil right.
It's a concept that needs to be known in every single household, because when you are diverse people and they don't have access, they have to be very creative.
Yeah.
That creativity has a lot of value. And sometimes it's unclear what is quote unquote can be protected.
Yeah.
Someone may come up with an awesome dance that takes over TikTok. Is that something that could potentially be protected?
Potentially by copyright, because it's an artistic or literary work in a fixed medium, right? And then if you have a name or you have a famous saying like okru that goes viral on Twitter, and you decide to put that on a shirt, that can be protected by trademark. And if your family was making papusas for the last 20 years by hand, and you found out that there was this really cool techie way to make it with an app, I don't know, that can be protected by patent. So it doesn't necessarily have to be this I'm not going to say lackluster, but this diversity agnostic piece of content or invention in order to be protected by within the way that we see intellectual property. We just have to expand and be bold enough, and that's what Firm for the Culture is doing. We're being bold and unapologetic about the idea that so too do your contributions count as significantly valuable, and let's talk about the steps to protect it.
Understand. I know a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, when they're bootstrapping, they're like, I don't really have the resources to maybe invest in intellectual property. And then you share this wonderful example about what happened with Black Lives Matter, can you maybe convey the value then? No, not the value. Instead of it being like an option, can you convey the necessity of why this is not something that's optional when you're starting your enterprise, when you're starting your brand?
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to like how we were conditioned to think about the value of our contribution. I've had so many entrepreneurs come to me and say, I'm not going to invest in protecting my brand until I make my first 10K or until I make, my first 100K or something. And for me, it's like, that shouldn't be the barometer. The barometer is how much do you believe in your brand? Because rarely do I see business owners just simply going into their brand as like a plaything. They're like, oh, I just want to see how this goes. Like, what? Like, no, then I personally wouldn't want you as a client. Like, just to be real. But also just like at Firm to the Culture, we say, if you have a brand that's making impact, you have a brand worth protecting. Because the fact of the matter is, like, as people of color and as social entrepreneurs, we are inherently creative people. We learn how to make $1 out of 15 cents. We learn how to go viral and have a popular video on Twitter or TikTok and have a viral hashtag without spending any money. So the fact of the matter is, if you're thinking of, or even gaining any money, frankly, if you're thinking of, I'm gonna wait until I make the first 10K, you're gonna be waiting a really long time, having all these viral videos in your back pocket with people seeing your brand and having brand recognition. So that is not the barometer against which you should measure whether your brand is becoming a household name. On the other hand, one of the things that I tell my clients to consider is how much would it cost for you to do a rebrand? In the event that you find out that your brand, one, can't be trademarked, or two, is going to subject you to liability because somebody else has already seen the value in a brand that's very similar to yours and went to the USPTO to trademark it or to register it first. One of the concepts that we talk about is like, or maybe I talk about it a lot more because I'm Black and a trademark attorney, is just a concept that I like to call trademark gentrification. Trademark law does not award the originator. It awards the first user. It awards the first person that literally markets and monetizes the brand. So you can be the whole originator. You can say, I did this is me, all me. But if you don't put that on a shirt, if you don't make it a hashtag, not even a hashtag, if you don't put it on a shirt, if you don't put it on a podcast, if you don't sell it, and if you don't sell that brand in association with something, you are not protected by trademark. So what oftentimes happens is we'll have this really cool, because we're just naturally creative, we'll have this really cool concept and I'll go viral on Instagram, I'll go viral on Facebook, go viral on Twitter, go viral on TikTok, and huge corporations will see the value in that and they'll start putting it on t-shirts, they'll start putting it on products and services and stuff, and then they'll go to the trademark office and file for a trademark because they were the first to actually use it in the way that trademark law anticipates, and then they'll send you a cease and desist to stop using the name that you made, and you are not protected. So the question is, and what does that look like practically speaking? That looks like tens of thousands of dollars in rebranding. I'm talking to, like, unfortunately, we come into contact with so many clients who have huge followings, 100K followers, 300K followers, 20K followers, having to change their name. Do you know how much trauma, how traumatic that is?
Mm-hmm. That it happens.
And imagine having to change your name once you get a cease and desist. It's one thing to change your name because your lawyer told you it's time to change your name under the auspices of attorney-client privilege, because you're still kind of under the radar. But it's a whole nother thing to be forced to change your name once you get a cease and desist. Because the problem with the cease and desist is literally, as the name suggests, you have to cease and desist. You cannot do anything with the brand that is the subject matter of the cease and desist lest you get sued. So all the money that you're going to have to use to rebrand, that can't come from your brand. You can't sell anything.
Right.
You can't sell anything. Like, you can't. So that is an even more unenviable quagmire to find yourself in. And that's why it's just so important at the front and to really, clear your name, talk with a trademark attorney about whether it's actually a name that can be protected or a name that should be registered. And if not, pivot with, like, at Firm for the Culture, we do those. We do brand pivot plans, brand pivot sessions. So in the event that you find out your name can't actually be used under the auspices of attorney-client privilege, we talk through more creative names that you can utilize to protect your brand as you scale your impact.
Wow. I want to be mindful of your time, pretty much at the top of the hour. But you hit home on so many things that are really critical that we need to have additional conversations about. But I really would like for you to just highlight what's the best way for people to get a consultation with you, for them to explore trademarking for their particular enterprise, potentially rebranding strategies, the whole 9 yards. And we're going to make sure that we spread that word.
Oh, shucks. Thank you so much, Wes. So the first thing that you can do is just go to our website, firmfortheculture.com. And if you want to book a call with us, go to /book. So firmfortheculture.com /book. And if you're interested in joining our FFC family, we have over 1,000 subscribers in our FFC family. So just text culture, CULTURE to 33777. Again, that's culture, CULTURE to 33777 to get a free trademark guide and to be added to our family, where you'll get weekly, trademark tips as well as the inspirational word of wisdom. Follow us on Instagram. We are truly the firm for the culture. So we're out here talking about all types of crazy things, and we're just having so much fun. So continue to digital dance with us at Firm for the Culture on Instagram. And again, if you want to book a call, feel free to reach out to us and book a call at firmfortheculture.com /book.
And before we close, would you mind sharing a little bit about the First Generation Purpose Project?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You brought it back. So the First Generation Purpose Project was actually my first business before I started Firm for the Culture. And First Generation Purpose Project is this initiative designed to help first generation professionals navigate life and career by utilizing the grit and tenacity that's already in them. And First Generation Purpose Project is really the organization that I needed when I graduated from law school. So I think, one thing that is very fortunate about the world we live in today is that there are a lot of undergraduate programs designed for first generation professionals. There are even a lot of graduate programs designed for first generation professionals, but not so many post-grad or professional programs designed for first generation professionals. And as you can tell at this point, I make businesses out of things that I personally need, so whatever. I'm like, well, hopefully somebody else needs this. But First Generation Purpose Project really has a lot of conversations with first generation professionals about budgeting, about forming healthy financial boundaries. Because, if you are the first professional in your family to, get a law degree or get a graduate degree, you may be making more money than anyone in your family has ever seen. And there's healthy financial boundaries that has to be built as a result of that to create generational wealth. We talk about sometimes the traumatizing experience in shifting your identity. You're not so much where you used to be, but you're not yet where you want to be. So kind of finding yourself in this in between and how to engage that. We talk about being able to treat yourself. If you're anything like me as a first generation professional, I did not see the value in relaxing or treating myself.
Right.
It was like hustle. But we talk about how treating yourself and really starting to invest in yourself can really help you in the long run. And we've been around since 2018. And yeah, it's been a cool, awesome ride. Once me and my team created it, our first client was Yale. Our second client was the Department of Justice. So, we realized very, very quickly that this was a brand worth protecting. And this was a brand that was making a lot of impact. So, First Generation Purpose Project was my first client in terms of trademark. And we also have First Generation Purpose Project federally trademarked.
That's what I'm talking about. Well, I'm really grateful to hear that program exists. There are plenty of people who may not be the first generation in terms of their parents immigrated here, but they're the first generation to go to college. And that service that you offer is wonderful. And I'm looking forward to joining it myself. And I just keep saluting you. I thank you tremendously for your insights, for being very real, for allowing people to see that you're a humble person who is successful and that you can be both, and also understand the privilege you have as well as the responsibility. So thank you very, very much.
Absolutely.
Spread the word.
Wes, it's been a blessing. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. And happy Thursday to you.
Thank you. You too. Bye.